when it comes to the changes that were made to that report, there were some issues that were brought up that were rejected outrightly by the conference.
Yes.
The issue of making setting up a special court.
Yes. In fact, let me just say something there, because I'm guilty as charged. I'm among those who are against setting up. See, each time you give people a problem to tackle in Nigeria, they come up with two general recommendations. One, to set up a new commission or a new committee. They don't even take the trouble to identify old committees or units of government that are supposed to address the same issue. They immediately articulate a case to try and set up a brand new commission, committee, ministry, or something to address the issue. That's one. The second one, which is also linked to that, is because of the failure of our legal system, and I repeat, our lawyers and judges have failed the nation. You cannot get justice quickly in Nigeria. So everybody makes a case for a new court, special court, to address the problems from his own area. And why are they asking for special courts? Because everybody knows and accepts that our regular courts have failed. So now the point I'm making is that let us address the failure of our regular courts. Not asking for a court for environment, a court for taxation, a court for land, a court for immigration. Everybody wants a special court. And that is why also I spoke against the recommendation of the Committee on Religion. They had a very good report, well-reasoned, well thought out. But I thought on the issue of setting up a religious equity commission, they misfired completely. Religion, the right to pursue your faith, to worship, and so on, is part of your fundamental human rights. Now, we already have, commissions and institutions that are out there to protect your fundamental human rights. Religion is a subset of your fundamental human rights. So I thought it was a mistake. Also, there are also other bodies that were supposed to address some of the issues and concerns they were worried about. And I also thought that the whole idea of setting up one more commission, religious equity commission, I thought it was fraught with danger for a different reason. I'm among those who believe that bringing religion into government was a mistake. Likewise, bringing government into religion has to be a mistake. Now, if you think carefully about that religious equity commission, they were asking for the government to come and set up a commission with two co-chairmen, one Muslim, one Christian. The government will choose one Muslim, government will choose one Christian, then the government will bring this and bring that and pay them money. Look, if you don't want religion in government, you also don't want government in religion. In any case, like I was arguing, I didn't understand anything that they were asking for that wouldn't be achieved better through the Christians and the Muslims on their own getting together, their leadership, to create an NGO to address the same problem. I gave the example that in France, on family values, when they were being attacked, people nowadays argue about the right of children to have sex freely with a man or woman, all sorts of things. When people were shocked and horrified that these so-called modern trends were threatening family values, it was the Catholic Church and the Muslims that got together and said, hey, we have to work together to defend family values. Because guess what? Their family values we're not very different between them. And this new generation of people preaching all sorts of new things were threatening both the Catholic and Muslim family values. So it wasn't the government of France that told the Catholics and the Muslims to get together. It was the leadership of the Catholics and the Muslims looking for support. Say, how do we fend off this attack on family values? So that's why I also argue that in Nigeria too, in the spirit of that excellent report that came from the Committee on Religion at the National Conference, even those same people in that committee should go back to their leaders, be it Muslim, Christian, whatever, and say, hey, something started at the confab, a spirit of cooperation, working together, the two major religions to solve all this violence and conflict and rivalry and. So why don't we form some pressure group on our own? I'm happier with the Muslims choosing people or persons who can adequately represent them as that kind of NGO. The Christians doing the same, as opposed to asking government to appoint, various people here, there, and yonder. What happens when government appoints the wrong person? If it's an NGO, and it's self-funding. Let me tell you what happens when you appoint the wrong person or persons. If you appoint the wrong person or persons, typically speaking, your funding dries up. People who are funding you, seeing a clown in charge, will stop funding you. But if the government is funding you, even if you put an income pool in charge, every year there's a guaranteed vote in the budget, and then nobody will dare touch it because the Christians will want it, so will the Muslims. So they'll both vote in favor. There's a huge kitty. There's also the danger that the not so scrupulous so-called Christians and Muslims will be the ones who will lobby to get the appointments. So I just thought that it was fraught with danger. That, interestingly, we saw the same diagnosis in terms of something had to be done about religion. We're like using the facts of the same case to arrive at two opposite conclusions. The committee felt that the solution was to bring government into religion to help to create a commission. Some of us said it is because of these very problems that we want government out of religion, and that it should be a self-effort, and it can be done by the Muslims and Christians themselves.
I found it interesting that so far the report on religion almost had the largest number of people that wanted to speak on it.
And yet this was the committee that had the fewest number of volunteers who wanted to serve on it. But that tells you two stories. That many of us believe that obviously religion is important to people, but it is not the item on which they want to spend all their energy at a national conference writing the report. So they didn't mind if somebody else did it. But when somebody else has done it, if he dares say the wrong thing or something they don't like, as in this case when I read the report, everything was beautiful until I saw the idea of bringing government into religion via a commission. And I just said that's a no-no. So therefore I was willing to spend time to debate and amend and modify a report, but I was not willing to spend my 2 weeks sitting down in a committee to discuss religion. Because with all due respect, religion, your faith should be between you and your God. I communicate with God myself directly. I don't need to do that through government. And it's people who are mischievous who want to bring religion into politics.
I also found it really significant that we had the first vote on that.
Well, we have had several votes. We have had several votes, but let me explain the difference. They were clear. Those were, you won't each time a simple matter comes up, an amendment which clearly nobody wants. You say ayes. One person says aye. The entire group says nay. You don't have to now count the votes because it's obvious. Even the person that proposed the amendment will hide their head in shame almost. So yesterday, should I say on Tuesday, two things happened. On the vote to kill the commission, which some of us sponsored, when it was put to the vote, a voice vote, I think it was clear, and the vice chairman said it, that those of us who wanted to scrap the idea of a commission won the voice vote, but it was marginal. Now, if it was marginal, then clearly we didn't have 70%. It meant that neither side had 70%, because if those of us who wanted to kill the idea of a commission were slightly in the majority, then it meant that the other side too didn't have 70%. So what the chairman did was something in line with the rules, which was to bracket it, which means that this item is controversial, contentious. Let us send it to a smaller group to see whether they can work out the compromise. And typically that smaller group is composed by calling people who are for and against, putting them together and see whether they can work out the compromise, which they can then present to the whole house. So that was one solution, which is the same thing that was applied earlier. Yeah. The second one was on the issue of scrapping the pilgrims boards. Interestingly, the whole house agreed, more or less, that government should no longer sponsor anybody to go on a pilgrimage. If you want to go on a pilgrimage, even in the Muslim faith, you're supposed to go on a pilgrimage if you can afford it. Nobody expects a beggar who has no money, who cannot eat 3 meals a day, to go on a pilgrimage. So the issue was that it's people who can afford, if it's people who can afford a pilgrimage, Muslim or Christian, that should go on a pilgrimage, then why is the government funding you? If you can't afford it, stay at home. If you can afford it, pay the bill yourself. Government has no business paying for anybody's pilgrimage. So on that one, the committee was very forthright. We all endorsed it. It was like almost 100%. I said almost, not 100%. Then the next issue came. Somebody then proposed an amendment that since we have agreed that government should no longer sponsor, Nigerians to go on a pilgrimage, why don't we simply scrap the entire pilgrims boards to ensure, because the fear was that if you say government should not sponsor pilgrimages, but there's still a pilgrims board, the pilgrims board comes every year, presents a budget, gets a vote. What are they supposed to do with their money except have their members or their friends equally seeing how they can use the budget to go on a pilgrimage? So some people felt that, look, just scrap the pilgrims board. And that instead of a pilgrims board, the embassies or consulates in those countries which Nigerians tend to go on pilgrimage, Saudi Arabia for Muslims, Vatican City for Catholics, Jerusalem for other Christians. Instead, we should strengthen the embassy in those countries and put people in there who can do the work of a pilgrims board, because in any case, you know there will be a large number of Nigerians coming. So in effect, beef up the embassy. That is not an expenditure on pilgrimage. That is tailoring your embassy's personnel to meet the challenges that are expected in that environment, which is what any normal government would do anyway. So some were arguing that therefore scrap the pilgrims board. But there was a division in the House on the issue of scrapping the pilgrims board. And when it was put to a voice vote, those of us who were saying scrap the pilgrims boards, I think won marginally. Again, it was clearly not 70%. Perhaps at best it was 55-45. Now, our rules say for consensus there should be 70%. So therefore, some on the other side who lost the vote immediately challenged it and said, and they're correct, and they said what? The people who want to scrap the pilgrims vote do not have 70%. So you cannot just say the ayes have it. So instead, since we are not sure whether they have 70, 65, 55, the only way we can resolve it is to have a real physical ballot. And if somebody challenges that and proposes that, let us count and see whether these people have the majority. I don't think the vice chairman or the chairman has a choice except to grant their wish, because it's in their rules. You cannot attain consensus from the back door. But interestingly, on the issue of the Religious Equity Commission, those of us who wanted to kill it had a slight majority. Now that creates a major problem for those who want it, because they need 70% to create it. Because the status quo right now is that there's no Religious Equity Commission. If they want to propose something for the House to accept, they need 70%. And if they couldn't win on a voice vote, how will they get 70%? That's why they need to, hence they need to put it in a bracket and for us to dialogue more and see whether they could propose something or modify it. I've already given a hint. If it was an NGO with even a one-off take-off grant from the government to help it, which means thereafter is self-funding, perhaps some of us would look at it differently. But we don't want government in business every day, every year, via some commission.
So the first vote to be taken at the National Conference will take place this coming week. Not the voice vote that has been adopted to settle a lot of issues at the National Conference, but a counting of votes. Now, I wonder how it will go. Well, stay with us and you'll have all the details here on the program. Till we meet next week, I'm Lanre Lasese. Bye.